It's the Week 12 Stick and Puck recap. We've already recorded this once while forgetting to turn on the mic. So let's just get this over with. No fancy editing, just one take. First matchup, Week 12. By the way, sponsored by the Tony Bet Guy. However, there will be no gambling at the Stick and Puck watch party. It was Lenny's Leap Years versus Egg United. Egg United wins 106.3 to 91.7. The MVP is Stuart Skinner. Gets revenge on his former team after Lenny had dropped him after the slow Oilers start. Sebastian Aho continues to do well, 16.8. And Igor Shesterkin on the Legend, 16 points. However, Thatcher Demko strangely gets no starts. I realize the Canucks only had one game all week. However, you would think that Demko would have received that one start. But no, that was not the case. Matt Duchene continues to regresses back to normal. I'm not sure if 2.9 fantasy points is normal, though leading the team also would not be considered normal for Duchene. Looking at the graphs, Lenny's Legends got off to a big start, but what happened on day 3, I don't remember, but Egg United roared back. Fairly even the last 3 days, but it was really that one day that did it for Egg United. Next matchup, Mustachios, 103.1 over Skill Stick Fail, 47.3. The MVP of the matchup is goalie Jeremy Swayman, 10.4 fantasy points. A strong team effort for the Mustachios, not many low scores. Adrian Kempe was just 0.1 fantasy points away from tying Swayman. He has the Boston goalie tandem. Worked well in Week 12, 16.6 points for the week. Could we see a similar strategy for the Leap Years, now the Legends? We'll see, but probably not anytime soon. One of the worst single-week performances we've ever seen. This really stings for Egg United. After getting over 100 points, roaring back to beat Egg United in the previous week, Skill Stick Fails gets a terrible total of 47.3 points in Week 12. Top player for the Fails was Charlie Coyle, solid 11.0. You look at the matchup, it really... the first day told the story, a huge start. Look at it on this graph. It was never close. Mustachios go to 8-4, while Skill Stick Fail continues to be in the basement of the Clarence Campbell division, 3-9. Looking at the records here, 9-3, Lenny drops to, while Egg United goes to 500, 6-6. Third matchup. How is this happening versus Staying Alive? Staying Alive with their second victory of the season, 89.3 to 56.6. How is this happening? Drops to 8 and 4th, third place in the Prince of Wales division. A very low ceiling, high floor type performance from Staying Alive. Rantanen sticks out with the most points. He's your MVP. He got 9.3 fantasy points. Pavel Zacha totals the lowest score for Still Stick. Sorry, I hate that acronym there. Staying Alive. It confuses me every time. Yet still somehow acceptable 3.3. So fairly consistent effort across the board for the club, it seems. Elias Pettersson, we mentioned only the one game for the Canucks. 0.3 points only in that one game. However, James Reimer did a lot in only his one appearance. However, in a negative sense, -7 points in that one game. Looking at the graphs, Staying Alive got off to a big start, continued on day 2 or 3. Remember, there was a Christmas break here, I believe. How is this happening? Made it close or closer on the next day, but look at that final day. Staying Alive with the convincing win. Really a low total, from how is this happening. The next matchup is Slay All Year versus Doketown Danglers. The Danglers win 127.2 to 109.1. The Danglers 5-6-1, fourth in the division, while Slay All Day still second, but that lead is slipping away, 6-5-1. Incredible deep performance for the Danglers. Luke Hughes, Jake Wallman, Chris Letang, total 32.4 fantasy points. Xander Best, the owner of Doketown Danglers, his Penguins knowledge is seemingly helping him at this point. Some smart pickups from the Penguins, Ricard Raquel, and Nedeljkovic. If that's wrong, correct me in the comments. Slay, great goaltender performance from Wedgwood and Bobrovsky. He's still on the case. 18.8 fantasy points for the week from that duo. Unfortunately, Doketown's duo also has a strong week, 17.8 fantasy points. Team MVP, now Lenny legend, David Pastrnak, 11.4 fantasy points. Looking at the graph, it was close that first day. After that, days 3 and 4, Slay All Day actually gets out to more of a lead. But then it's day 5 and day 6 where the Doketown Danglers finish strong to get the victory. And final matchup for week 12, Forest Hills Flames versus Team 1. Team 1 wins 108.3 to 98.3. Team 1 tops in the league, 10-2, first in the Prince of Wales division, while Forest Hills Flames are fourth, 2-10, the mirror image of Team 1. Panarin, Breadman, continues his amazing performance. Maybe it's due to the bald style. Really flattering, a real nice, clean look for Panarin. Connor Ingram continues to be feast or famine. It was feast this week, 12.6 fantasy points. No standout performance in the skating department for the Flames. Seth Jarvis leads with 9.4 fantasy points. Tkachuk disappoints again, only 4.5 fantasy points for their number 1 draft pick. Spoiler alert, he does not disappoint in week 13. So looking at the graphs, Team 1 actually was behind by a considerable margin on day 2. But the next few days, they continue or begin to claw back, and that continues all the way to the final day for the victory. You can see slowly coming back, and then they cross over into the lead and onward and upward for the victory. That's week 12. But wait, there is more. Week 13, the bonus week recap. Sponsored by Stick and Puck Watch Party. Don't forget, this Saturday is the Stick and Puck Watch Party. Remember our special sponsors. Great value, regular, rippled potato chips. And we're excited about the new recipe. Also, Nielsen has donated macaroons. So it'll be rippled chips, macaroons, and some hockey this coming Saturday. Our first matchup in week 13, Doketown Danglers versus Egg United. It was the Danglers in a Campbell Conference division matchup with the victory, 119.7 to 112.9. It was a fairly close one. Now, this is the big mover in the Clarence Campbell division. The Danglers are now second. They're one of the hottest clubs in the league. Egg United drops to 6-7. A disappointing week for Egg United. For Doketown, Raquel looking like an amazing pickup after being promoted to line 1 on the Penguins, 9.7 fantasy points. The Penguins, it's feast or famine with them, it seems. They are feasting, or were feasting, in week 13, recording just over 34% of the Danglers' total skater points. Rupe Hintz has an awful week, just 0.4 fantasy points after 10.6 the previous week. Early injury to Jared Spurgeon looms large. Maybe that was the difference. Ferraro apparently on the bench playing well. I don't know how you play well on the bench, but somehow Ferraro did that. Looking at the graphs, after we noticed that Connor Hellebuyck is the MVP with a big total, 16.8 fantasy points. He has been perhaps Dopetown Danglers MVP so far this season. We'd have to check the stats, though, to be sure of that. So, Egg United got off to a lead, actually. It was even on day 2, but then day 3, the Danglers really come back. Egg United, though, it's back and forth. Day 4, day 5, they decrease that lead that the Danglers had, but the Danglers finish a little stronger than Egg United, and that's the difference in the graph. You can see it's a back and forth matchup, but in the end, it's the Danglers. All right. We have big news. Staying Alive gets their 3rd victory of the season, their first winning streak, 2 games in a row. 97.7 to 82.2. They are now 3-10, still 5th though, in the Prince of Wales division, while Slay All Day now drops to 6-1 and drops a position in the division, now 3rd. Could we be seeing the start of a huge mid-year turnaround for Staying Alive? Perhaps. Is it too late? Probably. Zach Hyman is the MVP for this week. In only 2 games, a hat trick against Ottawa scores him 7.9 fantasy points in only 1 night. By the way, last night he had 2 goals disallowed. So he perhaps was leading the league in disallowed goals and also near the top in allowed goals. Critical loss for Slay as Dopetown and Egg look to fight for 2nd spot in the Clarence Campbell division. Well, Egg is still 4th, but there does seem to be a real intense competition for that 2nd spot in the division. For Slay, Scott Wedgwood nearly cancels out an excellent performance by Bob, 13.8 performance by Bob. So the goaltender, at least one, Wedgwood, really gives the team a wedgie with his bad performance. Looking at the graphs, Staying Alive, after seemingly having no players the first day, comes back to get into the lead. It's close all the way along until that day 5 here is shown here on the graph. And then Slay All Day, I believe, had no players playing on the final day, and Staying Alive coasts to the victory. Now it's Team 1 versus Los Mustachios de Austin. This was perhaps, I think we could say, at least in hindsight, we didn't have a recap to give the marquee matchups for Week 13, but this really was the marquee matchup of Week 13. First and second place teams in the Prince of Wales division, and an upset. The Mustachios win by only 0.3 points, 102.9 to 102.6. Team 1 was waiting on the phone for the stat correction, but the call never came. And so Mustachios solidly in second. Team 1 still in first, but only 1 game separates them. Now, unexpectedly strong performance from Uyghur, breakout free agent pickup, dropped by 2 clubs, Egg and Team 1. Yegor Chinakhov, low totals nearly cost the Mustachios, posts just 0.6 fantasy points. I saw the waiver wire report that Mustachios actually dropped Chinakhov, and personally it's disappointing to see the lone league player of Chinese descent being dropped from one of our teams. Team 1, agonizing loss in terms of points. Now, we're going to have to talk to the slide maker. He says Team 1's place in the standings seems secure. I don't know how you can say that. Team 1 is by no means breathing easily right now with only the one game up on the Mustachios, the hottest team in the league in terms of wins. That was their 5th straight victory. 38-year-old Barrie, Ontario native Brent Burns adds a great 9.0. Also a player dropped by Aig United. Team owner Stephen Thompson, also a native of, or resident of Barrie, Ontario, might have been paying a visit to Brent Burns if he had posted 9.4 fantasy points. We'll never know. Looking at the graph after we make it known, as was already mentioned. No, we didn't mention he was the MVP. We mentioned his strong performance. Mackenzie Weegar, former Halifax Moosehead, with 13.7 fantasy points. Looking at the graph, not much points on those, many points on those on that first day, or that 0 day. Team 1 comes back, but then Mustachios, with making the most of a slow day in the NHL. Team 1 comes back, then Team 1 really comes back on day 4, but then notice the next 2 days Mustachios had the advantage. Really, it looked like on Sunday that Team 1 was going to win. Team owner John Couch was fairly confident on that night, but somehow the Mustachios pull out the victory. Next we have Skill Stick Fail versus Lenny's Legends. Lenny's Legends wins 112.3 to 82.5. Lenny, with the 10-3 record, is still first in the Clarence Campbell division, while the Fails are 3-10, remaining in 5th place in the division. Great depth from LGD, the lowest skater totaling 3.6 points. Giroux, since traded, apparently Patrick Kane also had 3.6 points. Depth will only be increasing, referring to the big trade, Connor McDavid for Pasternak and Makar. Still a little sore about that Makar onside call. But anyway, really after the Hyman two disallowed goals last night. Anyway, I digress. Patrick Kane cools off after 14.1 fantasy point performance the previous week. I think he was on the bench that week. Vasilevsky continues to serve up a stink sandwich. I've never had one, but I suspect they're not very good. Another negative performance, Connor Bedard. The bad news just continues for Skill Stick Fail. The jaw injury, saw he was out 6 to 8 weeks. So, they'll be needing to edit that lineup. Team MVP, surprisingly, Victor Hedman, 10.3 fantasy points. Skill Stick Fail, they had a lot of players playing in the Winter Classic on the first day, but somehow Lenny's Legends produced more points that first day, and actually not more, but almost as many. Getting my colors confused here. And then you look at the rest of the week. At that yellow, the lead just kept, for the most part, increasing. It was a comfortable victory, victory for Lenny's Legends. And next we have Forest Hills Flames versus How Is This Happening? It was the Flames, surprisingly winning 94.5 to 81.7. How Is This Happening? Continues to plummet in the power rankings. Now 8-5 and third in the Prince of Wales division. While the Flames go to 3-10, they're now 3-10 teams. Kachuk has that breakout week, as was spoiled earlier in the Week 12 preview. Jerry, another bad week. He's on the bench this week for the Flames, negative 5.4 points. Might lose his starting job to the Danglers netminder. Historic losing skid for Hith, now third as mentioned. Name change jinx, perhaps. Svechnikov on the bench, totaling 11.2 fantasy points 14.7 on the bench the week prior. Someone needs to hire a new coach. Looking at the graphs, after we mentioned that Matthew Tkachuk was the MVP, how is this happening? Gets off the lead, but the Flames just continue to dominate the matchup other than the day 5 portion of the matchup, as reflected in the graph. Alright, league-wide points. Not much has changed here. Lenny's Legends holds a slim lead over Team 1. Next we have Dogtown Danglers, which could be said to be the hottest team in terms of points for. Next up is Egg United. These are the two unluckiest teams, you could say, in the league. Next we have the Mustachios. Down a little bit further is Slay All Day. And then how is this happening? We have the Flames here in third from last. And now, not in the cellar anymore, is Staying Alive. At the bottom is Skill Stick Fail. Dogtown heating up. Marquee matchups. This week's marquee matchups. There are two. First of all, we have to say, how is this happening versus Egg United is our first marquee matchup. How is this happening has been dropping. Egg United wants to rise. They're looking for that fourth playoff spot. It looked like a few weeks ago that there would only be one playoff team coming out of the Clarence Campbell division. But now, with how is this happening dropping, it looks like there might be a second Clarence Campbell team in the playoffs. And so all three of the teams in that division are in contention for that fourth spot. Egg United is one of them, as well as the Danglers and the Slay. And so that's one of our marquee matchups. And then the other is the Mustachios versus the Danglers. The Danglers want to continue their hot streak, as do the Mustachios. These are perhaps the two hottest teams in the league, squaring off in Week 14. And predictions. Kind of cheating because we're making these predictions after Tuesday's games, but we'll do them anyways. How is this happening versus Egg United? I'm going to go with Egg United, which is fairly close at this point on a Wednesday afternoon. Flames versus Legends. This is a tight one, but I'm going to go with the Legends. Mustachios versus Danglers. Now the Danglers, to be honest, have a considerable victory. We've seen a victory like this vanish before, but I can't ignore the big lead. I'm going to go with the Danglers. Staying Alive versus Skill Stick Fail. I believe the Fail are ahead right now, but if I were to call this one at the beginning of the week, I would have said that Staying Alive is going to get their third victory in a row. Not sure about that now, but we're going to stick with that. Finally, Team 1 versus Slay All Day. I think this is another close one, although I think Team 1 had a big Tuesday, so I think maybe Team 1 has a bit of a lead right now. But I still would have said Team 1 at the beginning of the week. So the only one that I'm using hindsight on is the Danglers and Mustachios. I don't know which team, actually, I would have picked. That one would have really appeared to be a toss-up. All right, we'll see you next week. Don't forget about the watch party on Saturday. There's still time to keep viewing those past videos to get more chips and more macaroons during that watch party. All right, good luck in week number 14. We'll see you later.